verse 14 says, Then the disciples of John came to him, to Jesus, asking, Why do we and the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast? Jesus said to them, The attendants of the bridegroom cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, can they? But the days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. But no one puts a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch pulls away from the garment and a worse tear results. Nor do people put new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise the wineskins burst and the wine pours out and the wineskins are ruined. But they put new wine into fresh wineskins, and both are preserved. All right, so we're going to talk about those three things. Here they are coming and asking Jesus. Wouldn't it be nice to have Jesus to answer the questions? You know, people always want to throw a question at you out of nowhere. It'd be wonderful if, okay, Jesus, you take them. You take this one. And he was right there, ready to go. And he responds, and when they ask him about, why are your disciples not fasting like we do? The Pharisees would fast twice a week, on Mondays and Thursdays, and they would do it from 6 in the morning till 6 at night. And boy, at 6:01, I'd be eating a big old meal. But that, they could eat after dark or after the 6 p.m. thing happened, or right before the 6 a.m. But that's what they would do twice a week. Just like clockwork. They would fast. And here they are seeing Jesus. Oh, you're some big rabbi, and your disciples, even John's disciples, they would fast. And here you guys are having a big party. Now, verses 9 through 12 talk about Matthew being called, coming out of the tax booth, and then holding a big celebration. And it talks about in Luke that in honor of Jesus, he invited all of his tax collector friends, the worst of the worst. And so these Pharisees, their feathers are really ruffled right now because Jesus is there in the mix of this group, and he is not demonstrating their type of religion. Not demonstrating their type of religion. That has gotten me in trouble in my life so many times. I got to thinking about things that have been complained about regarding me. Anybody else ever get complained about? Preachers do. We get complained about. When I preached in a shirt without a collar, I got complained about. Oh, he just wants to be. It wasn't a t-shirt, but it was like they have the shirt that's collarless. It's not a t-shirt, but it's a dress shirt. I just wanted to preach in a t-shirt. I had a pulpit committee guy that was head of the pulpit committee, the search committee, whenever I came to this one church in Missouri. And he suggested that at his daughter's church, there was quote-unquote illusionists. It was evangelists that used magician type stuff. I may have mentioned this before. But he was exposing how they did stuff. And he was a great evangelist. They had a great harvest that came in at that church. And so he suggested that I call him. And I called him and brought him in. Oh, you wouldn't believe. And people heard we were going to have a magician in the pulpit. And it wasn't a magician. But that's, how things run. And it's not reality. It's what's perceived. But anyway, we had, he came. A lot of our people didn't come. But the community came. We couldn't have fit our people in there. And we had a stack this big of follow-up things, of people that had come, like 50 some odd decisions for salvation. And I couldn't get, because some people that were leaders in the church were so much against it, the others didn't want to offend them. I had no help getting those followed up because a magician came in the pulpit. Started a Saturday night service, trying to reach out to the younger community. That turned out to be a mess. Somebody complained that I was telling jokes in a sermon.
Oh, man. You didn't quit, though, did you?
No, I didn't quit.
didn't stop.
No, I did not stop. I did not stop at all. I told more jokes because of that. Because it was an anonymous. You know how you get these anonymous things that are sent to you?
You know, the suicide.
Well, that's not original with me, but yeah. You didn't like the deviled ham better or something like that, or hog heaven? One lady complained that I didn't look in her direction enough during the sermon. You were looking at other people. You weren't looking in our direction, on our side.
Sin more, I'll look more in your way.
Yeah, well, I didn't want to focus on sinners, is what I should have told her. I preached a sermon, and I kind of walked the aisles, and I didn't have a Bible with me, so I just quoted scripture, probably a dozen different scriptures to build the sermon around. I got a call that afternoon that I didn't teach the Bible that day, because I didn't officially get up there and read the text before. I just started preaching, started walking the aisles and preaching. And anyway, you get these grumpy, what's the church word for it? I don't know. There we go. All the other words that come into mind other than the church words. Anyway, here you have this group is coming in, and they're not like us. They're not doing it our way. And so they're complaining, and Jesus gives them this response of the bridegroom. Or what, like a wedding with a bridegroom's there. How are you going to respond in the midst of a bridegroom? If you're, the patch has you don't want to have this old shrunken garment. You can't expect a vibrant patch to fit on that, or new wine to go in an old container. So he gives them three responses to coming up on all these complaints that the Pharisees are doing. So he speaks to them about their whole demeanor. Irma Bombeck, she told a story about this little girl in church. She was in the pew and she turned around and was just smiling at everybody behind her. People were getting tickled, but she just kept smiling and looking at them. And her mom finally noticed she was doing it. Her mom said, "Turn around. Don't smile like that. You're in church." Then Irma Bombeck said, kind of commented on that and said, most people who come to church look like they just left the reading of a will of a rich uncle who left everything to a hamster. They bring that in there. They just appear that way. It's like, when did we start having communion using lemon juice instead of grape juice? Because we're looking like it.
Maybe you ought to preach this Sunday.
Sunday morning? Well, I'm trying to get them on here.
It's giving me a whole new outlook on this church.
A whole new outlook?
A whole new outlook by sitting on it, you look around and it's like this.
Oh, when you were doing the piano?
My mother's favorite.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah. Is this. You have to do this. If my mother knew she was doing those things in the nursing home, she would have been so embarrassed. But she got to the point where she wanted to sing. And when we went to sing the I'll Fly Away song, she automatically did this. And all the little people in here started doing the same thing. So I thought I would do that. And only two people that did that was Lois Shelton and Roger Whitehead, because they knew, and Twyla, because we've been there and seen them do this.
Yeah.
But that's the whole point. Well, thank you. I'm sorry.
All right, I'll start over.
Don't smile. You'll start what? But I can go. You need to go up there and look.
All right.
Around again like this.
Have you heard, did I say the Irma Bombeck?
Yeah, you did. Go ahead. Go.
All right. Jesus said to them, the attendants of a bridegroom cannot mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them, can they? But the days will come and the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast. Just imagine, Jesus is like the bridegroom. He's here on earth. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And they are the groomsmen. The 12 groomsmen, they get to follow him around. Why would they fast when you are with the ultimate bridegroom, the one that we are being fashioned as the bride for right now, and looking forward to that heavenly moment of that bridal moment, that bridal feast that's going to be happening? You know, at a wedding, it'd be terrible to be at a wedding and to be this, upset person. The bridegroom would hate that. You just mess up their whole day. The only person who has a right to be unhappy at a wedding is the father of the bride. As soon as he sees the bill, he can be as unhappy as he wants, and he's going to be. But weddings, you look at weddings today, it's ridiculous. Whatever happened to the justice of the peace or something like that? It's like $100 a minute to get married nowadays. And you think that would be even worse back 2,000 years ago, because a wedding would last 7 days. 7 days they would be celebrating at a wedding, and feasting and drinking. There was one man that came up to the preacher and he said, "I'll give you $500 if you can get this thing over with in 5 words." They came up in front of him. He looked at the man, said, "Take her." Take him. Took. We're done. Out of here. $500, please. Take her, take him, took. But anyway, it doesn't make sense to spend time fasting and mourning at a wedding. In fact, in the Talmud, it tells people that during a wedding, that you are resolved of any religious practice that would steal your joy. How much of what we do would have to disappear if that was the requirement of being in the presence of the bridegroom? Anyway, why would you fast? Why would you fast on Thanksgiving Day? Jesus in their midst was like Thanksgiving Day on earth every day for 3 years. Why would you fast on the day that you should be celebrating it? You know, Jeremiah describes, Jesus is talking about something new is here. There's something brand new about him being here. And Jeremiah talked about it in Jeremiah 31. He said, "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant." Remember Jesus with his cup? This is the cup of the new covenant. "With the house of Israel and the house of Judah. Not like the covenant which I made with their fathers in the day I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt." The old covenant, God had to take them by the hand with the law and just kind of lead them around. Don't do this, don't do that. This new covenant's different. He said, "My covenant which they broke, although I was a husband to them, declares the Lord. But this is the covenant which I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord." They're coming back together, just the house of Israel again. "I will put my law within them, and on their heart I will write it. I will be their God, and they shall be my people. They will not teach again each man his neighbor, and each man his brother, saying, 'Know the Lord,' for they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin I will remember no more." Jesus' coming was a game changer, because now we have a covenant where the Holy Spirit is within us. That we're not being led by a written law, that we actually have a brand new heart. We have this brand new relationship that is a relationship now. It's not a religion. If somebody says, well, if something like that happens, and then people, if they aren't held to the law, then they're just going to do this and do that. No, they're not. Not if you are truly born again and have a relationship with God. You're going to be striving to try to please Him. You're not going to be trying to see how much you can get away with and not have to do, and how close you can play to the fence so you're not in the middle of the yard, in the playground. You're going to want to please God every way possible, if it's real. If it's religion, I won't go today, I won't go today. How can I get out of this? It's a brand new thing. If people would just act in church like they were at the most important game that they had ever been at, and their team was winning. Because we are. We're winning this game. The scoreboard's already at the end of the book. We need to celebrate it, to be excited about it. Someone said the opposite of joy is not sadness, but unbelief. The opposite of joy is not sadness, but unbelief. That's where joy comes from, is faith and belief. You know, I read that and I thought about Olivia Newton-John. A lot of people would sing to their religion, hopelessly devoted to you. And that's what they're devoted to, this religious system. And we like religious systems because we can control them. Relationship, we have to surrender and be vulnerable to God every day. Then he says that no one puts a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch pulls away from the garment and a worse tear results. You remember, some of y'all, either y'all were too young or you weren't in my childhood in the 60s where we patched up those jeans. If you did not have, now they buy them with holes. But back then, if you got a hole in your jean, which if you're any kind of kid, kids don't go outside anymore, I guess. But back then we went outside and you scuffled around and you got holes in your knees. And you would get patches. Remember that song? Was that Dolly Parton, Patches? Or no, it was, who was it? Reba. Was it Reba? It's like you got it, but you... there was a song like that. Yeah, there was some lady that sang a song about patches. But you got to get a patch. If you had pants that had been washed and washed and washed and washed, and you went and got this brand new patch, or tried to patch it with a spot out of another material that had not been pre-shrunk or shrunk, and you put it on there, it's going to pull away and it's not going to fit the first time that you wash them together again, because one's been through it so many times that it's already set itself, and the other's going to be constantly in flux. And Jesus did not come to patch up the old system. He didn't come to fix something about it. He came with something brand new, not to fix the old covenant with a patch, but a new covenant. Something brand new. He didn't come to try to, I'm here to encourage you to obey the Ten Commandments. I'm here to inspire you, and I'm going to go back to heaven. That would not have helped us. You couldn't patch that. That is so broken. That's a hole that nothing could ever fill. Jesus says you don't need a patch. You need a new coat. You need a whole new garment. And that's what he provided for us. You know, it's hard to fit an excited new believer into an old, shrunken religion. It's hard to fit them. Too many people have allowed themselves to shrink in their faith to shrink over time. And, you know, the opposite of real life should be happening in our spiritual life, because in real life, the more you wash things, they tend to shrink. But the more you go through the wash cycle spiritually, the more your faith should expand and grow. I wrote this down, waiting on y'all to come in here tonight. Fear ages us while faith makes us spiritually younger. Fear ages us. Faith makes us spiritually younger. It's exciting, it's joyful, it's new. It puts the smile back on our face and energy in our step spiritually. But fear ages us while faith makes us spiritually younger. Then he says you can't put new wine in old wineskins, because new wine needs to have room to expand when the fermentation. When that process starts to happen, and the gassy whatever starts to expand things, when your new wine is going through the fermentation process, and if you put it in an old skin of a sheep or a goat that they would have used, and that's already gone through that process with other wine in the past, and it's been stretched in those processes, and you put a brand new, ready to expand batch in it, it's not going to be able to hold. It's going to bust, and the wine's going to be spilled, and the container is going to be broken. And the container needs to be able to receive the new covenant. Jesus wasn't coming to try to fit into the old Jewish Pharisees' way of doing it. They needed to fit into him as the new wine, and wine would speak of joy, and he brought something exciting and fresh and new, and it needed to be able to stretch. And we need to be able to stretch. We need to be able to grow with what God is doing in our lives, because it's always something new, and it's always something unplanned, usually, because we wouldn't probably have chosen it for ourselves. That's why it's so cool that God is going to do it in our life. And I got this new app on my phone. It goes with my home thermostat. And my son goes to sleep early. I could be stretching him. I could be heating it up, cooling it down, confusing him, making him get up and fix it again, because he doesn't know I got that app now. So I could really be messing with him from here in Diana. That's what God does with us. He says, what do they need right now? Okay, let me program it in. Here we go. And we're like, this is getting too hot, God. Don't do this. He's like, a little hotter. He knows what we need. And he's got a sense of humor, so he may be messing with us sometime. I don't know. But anyway, if you don't have that real relationship with God, and I'm not a good salesman at all, and if I talk you into anything, there's going to be a better salesman that's going to come along in your life. That'll probably talk you out of it. That's why we lose so many kids when they go to college. There's professional salesmen there, just waiting for them. And the thing is, you can talk somebody out of religion, but you can't talk them out of relationship. If they have a relationship, a true relationship with God, you can't talk them out of that. I mean, they might not know the answers to all your questions, but they're solid in knowing that relationship with God is there. But if they've got religion and they grew up in the church and they learned how to say this and go there, stand up, sit down, they're probably going to be talked out of it. Because they've been sold on it for all these years, but it hasn't connected. And so a professional will come along and talk them out of it. But if you have a relationship, that's like telling me my grandmother never existed just because you don't know her and you never saw her. I'm sorry, I got a relationship there that I'm basing my belief off of. And if you're connected to God like that, it doesn't matter if that guy has never seen God, experienced God himself. You have. So it doesn't matter what his opinion is. But again, people get addicted to religion because they can set their own terms. They can call the shots in it. Well, here you have a problem that sparked all this. And the problem was that Matthew, a tax collector, did not fit into the Pharisees' expectation of a brand new convert to a rabbi. And that really messed him up, and that all of his friends would come in there. And to try to take the gospel and make it fit into legalism, it's not going to work. It's not going to fit. And legalism comes in all these different ways. Just because something's new doesn't mean it's not legalistic. I mean, go to some of the churches here in town, put on a suit, ask if you can sing a hymn. We don't do that anymore. Go put on something casual. Sing what we got up there. That's what we do. Legalism doesn't mean that you are from the past. It's that you're locked in, rigid, your way or the highway. That's what legalism is all about. Someone said the difference between a rut and a grave is the length and the depth. The difference between a rut and a grave is the length and the depth. You know, at the funeral, I talked about Barnabas because this guy reminded me of Barnabas. And when you look in the Bible, when you look at what Barnabas did, number one, he was willing to seek out God's servant, or to get in touch with what God was doing. While all the others were running from Paul, who used to be Saul, he recognized it as a move of God. And in Acts chapter 9, he defended Paul to the disciples and began to describe all the things that God was doing. And you know, that's what Barnabas was like. Barnabas also got personally involved in helping others. He sold his own land because there were needs all around him. I mean, this is what it means to kind of break the mold. Everybody else was rigid. And he was shaking everything up. He got publicly involved in a council meeting. All of them were saying, you've got to do this, they got to be Jews, they got to get circumcised. And he and Paul stood up there and said, no, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. This is what the Word of God says. He was breaking the mold. And then he saw potential in others when even Paul and him disagreed about John Mark. He saw the potential in John Mark even after John Mark's failure. And John Mark is why we've got Mark, the gospel. So obviously the potential happened. And that was the first gospel we had. You'll be willing to shake it up. This guy that I did a sermon on, he was famous for his God pocket, because he'd always have a pocket where he had some money that he had set aside for whatever God was going to lead him to do that day. That God was going to provide just an avenue of ministry. He didn't know what it was when he woke up, but he had a pocket ready when God showed him. You know, what? Yes, Lord. God's a woman. That's the voice I heard. Okay. I didn't say that. All right, so think about three things. I'll close with this. Every day, celebrate your relationship with Christ like you're at a wedding. Every day. Live in such a way that you'll never be a patch to match the shrunken faith of others. And live your faith in such a way that you would break a boring church wide open. They wouldn't know what to do with you. All right.